If you've ever played Valorant, you've probably felt it. That crispness, right? That sense of fairness where it feels like your skill is the only thing that actually matters. So, have you ever stopped to wonder what's going on under the hood to make that happen? Well, we're going to dive right into it because honestly, the engineering behind Valorant is a total masterclass in system design. Yeah, this is the big question, isn't it? The one that's kind of at the heart of the whole experience. Why does this game feel so incredibly responsive, so consistent, especially when you put it up against other top-tier shooters? It's one of those feelings that's it's hard to put into words, but once you feel it, you just can't ignore it. So here's the thing. The answer, it's not some magic piece of tech. It's not one clever line of code they wrote. Nope. It's way deeper than that. It's a philosophy, a guiding principle that literally dictates every single engineering decision they make, right from the very beginning. And that philosophy, it boils down to just two words: competitive integrity. And I mean, this is it. This is their North Star, the one goal that is completely non-negotiable. The entire system, everything we're about to talk about, is built to make sure that the only thing that decides who wins or loses is your skill and your strategy, not your internet, not your fancy graphics card, and definitely not some cheater. Okay, so integrity. That sounds pretty abstract, right? How do you actually engineer for that? Well, Riot's answer was to build their entire architecture on three huge foundational pillars. And the whole point of these pillars is to normalize the experience, to level the playing field for every single player. Let's break them down. All right, here they are, the big three. First up, we've got network purity. This is all about leveling the playing field when it comes to your internet connection. Then there's client-side parity. That's making sure your expensive gaming rig doesn't give you an unfair edge over someone on a laptop. And finally, systemic trust. This one's all about building an absolute fortress against cheaters. And believe me, each one of these is absolutely essential. So let's start with that first one, network purity. Look, zero latency is literally impossible, right? Laws of physics and all that. But what Valorant does so brilliantly is create the illusion of it. And they do it with this incredible three-part strategy. It all starts with the very heartbeat of the game server itself. And that heartbeat, it's called the tick rate. Now, the easiest way to think about it is like frames per second, but for the server. It's how many times every second the server takes a snapshot of the entire game world to figure out what's happening. So, pretty simple. The higher the tick rate, the more accurate and up-to-date the game is. Okay, and this right here is where Valorant made its first huge game-changing move. See, the industry standard for most games for their official servers was 64 tick. Valorant comes out of the gate with 128 tick servers for everyone, for free. And look at the numbers here. This is what's crazy. 15.6 milliseconds for an update versus just 7.8. I mean, do the math. Valorant server is literally twice as fast, which means it's twice as accurate. So really, just burn this number into your brain, 7.8 milliseconds. That's the absolute maximum delay just on the server's end before it even thinks about sending info out to you. By doubling that tick rate, Riot just instantly sliced the potential for server-side lag in half. And this isn't just some small quality-of-life tweak. No way. This is a foundational piece of the puzzle for everything else they wanted to build. But having a super fast server is kind of useless if the data has to sit in a traffic jam on the public internet. It's like having a Ferrari, but you're stuck on the freeway at 5 p.m. So this is where Riot made probably their single biggest, most mind-blowing investment, Riot Direct. This isn't software. It's a massive, private, global network. They basically built their very own ISP, a private internet, just for their games. It's wild. And the why behind this crazy investment was actually pretty simple, but super ambitious. The goal was to get at least 70% of their players, so the vast majority, on a connection with less than 35 milliseconds of ping. That's incredibly fast. By owning the whole network pipe from you to them, they can just bypass all the congestion and junk on the public internet. This doesn't just lower your lag, it also fights that annoying jitter, when your ping is jumping all over the place. It makes everything feel way more stable. Okay, so all of this, the 120 tick servers, the private network, it all comes together to fight the boogeyman of online shooters, the peeker's advantage. Look, this is just a reality of physics. It takes time for data to travel, so the person peeking a corner is always going to see their opponent a few milliseconds before the opponent sees them. Valorant can't break the laws of physics, but by combining that super fast server with that clean network, they shrink that advantage down to the absolute bare minimum. It makes those gunfights feel so much more fair and consistent. All right, let's move on to pillar number 2, client-side parity. And you'll see how these ideas start stacking on top of each other. Because that competitive integrity thing, it's not just about your internet connection. It's also about making sure the game is fair, whether you're running a top-of-the-line beast of a PC or what Riot themselves called the 10-year-old laptop problem. I mean, just look at these hardware targets for a second. The minimum spec goal was to get this game running at a stable 30 frames per second on an Intel HD 3000 integrated GPU. For anyone who doesn't know, that's a piece of hardware from like 2013 that was never, ever designed for serious gaming. Making a modern competitive shooter run on that, well, that's a monumental challenge. So how in the world did they pull that off? The game's built on Unreal Engine 4, right? A super high-end engine known for making absolutely gorgeous, graphically intense games. Their solution was, well, it was completely counterintuitive. They called it engineering by subtraction. They didn't just use the engine out of the box. They went in and surgically gutted it. They ripped out and rewrote huge chunks of it, especially the parts that do fancy lighting and graphics, all just to force this absolute beast of an engine to run on that ancient hardware. And that brings us to the third and final pillar, systemic trust. Because think about it. You can have the best network in the world, the most optimized game client, but if people can cheat, none of it matters. The whole idea of competitive integrity just goes right out the window. So Riot's final mission was to build an unbeatable digital fortress, something to protect what they call the ground truth of every single match. And this is probably their most elegant solution of all. Here's how it works in most shooters. Your PC, right now, knows where every single player is on the map, even if they're behind 3 walls. So a wall hack cheat is super simple. It just reads that information and draws a box around them. Easy. Valorant's approach, it's completely different. Your PC knows nothing. The server refuses to send you the location data for an enemy until the moment you are actually supposed to be able to see them. If they're behind a wall, as far as your computer is concerned, that player doesn't even exist. This fog of war system, it's just pure genius. First off, it kills the most common type of cheat, wall hacks. Absolutely dead in its tracks. You can't hack information that your computer never receives. As a nice little bonus, it also cuts down on network traffic, since the server is sending you less data. But the most important thing is that it reinforces that idea of the server as the single source of truth. And this is where you see all the pillars come together. You need those 128-tick servers and that super stable Riot Direct network for a system like this to work without feeling incredibly laggy. Now, that handles wall hacks. But what about cheats that run on your PC, like aimbots? For that, Riot deployed Vanguard. And this is their aggressive, and let's be honest, pretty controversial anti-cheat solution. The best way to think about it is this. Imagine your computer's operating system is a big office building. Most programs you run are on the upper floors with standard security. Vanguard, though, is a kernel-level driver. That means it runs at the deepest, most foundational level of the building. It has the master key. Now, the reason they do this, their justification, is that the most sophisticated cheats also try to hide down in that foundation. So to catch a thief in the basement, you need your security guard to be in the basement too.
Okay, so when you step back and look at the whole thing, the network, the client performance, the anti-cheat, you see this perfectly unified architecture where every piece supports the others. It's incredible. But, and this is a big but, this kind of perfection comes at a really high price. It involves some very significant, very deliberate trade-offs.
And this chart right here just makes it crystal clear. Look at this. In every single one of these key categories, Valorant is just in a league of its own. They didn't just slightly improve on what other games were doing. No, they created a fundamental fork in the road for how competitive shooters are even designed. I mean, think about it. No other major competitor is doing all of these things at once. 128 tick, a private network, a kernel-level anti-cheat, and a server-side fog of war. It's a completely different beast. So what are those trade-offs? Well, here are the big 3. First, the graphics. The game is built for clarity and performance above all else, which means it's never going to win any awards for photorealism. It's just not the goal. Second, user trust. That Vanguard anti-cheat, it asks players to give up a certain level of comfort and maybe privacy in exchange for that hardcore security. And third, and this is the big one, money. Capital. Riot Direct wasn't some clever software trick. It was a brute force solution that cost a staggering amount of money to build out. So, when all is said and done, what's the final verdict here? Well, it's pretty clear. The engineering behind Valorant is, without a doubt, a monumental achievement. It's a system that was built from day one with this laser-like focus, this absolute clarity of purpose, competitive integrity. And you can see that goal reflected in every single nut and bolt of the entire system. And that leaves us with one final really fascinating question to chew on. Did Valorant just set a new gold standard? Is this the bar that all other competitive shooters now have to try and clear? Or, because of the insane cost and all those trade-offs, is it something else? Is it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, an anomaly that's so unique it can never really be copied? That, right there, is the big question for the entire industry moving forward.